Here we are. This is it. Last notes of the year. Woo! Law of cosines. If you cannot use law of sines, remember for law of sines, we needed that corresponding side and angle. And sometimes we could get it because they gave us two angles, and we were able to find the third. But sometimes that's not the case. If you cannot use law of sines, then law of cosines is your next option. It is longer, it is more work, and there are far more mistakes. But sometimes it's a necessary thing. So there's three equations here. They are all different versions of the exact same thing. So I'm going to say it again. Please remember, sides are lowercase. So side A squared, if you're trying to solve for it, equals B squared plus C squared. So the other two sides, so if you're trying to find one side, the other two sides minus 2 times those other two sides. So this is B and C, this is B and C, and then times the cosine of A. So this angle over here corresponds to this side that you're solving for, corresponds to that. And then the two sides in, I'm going to change that to a different color. And then these two sides. So if you're finding A here or you're using A here, then the other two inside need to be the other two sides, B and C. If it's angle B or side B, then you're using angle B. If you're trying to find side C or angle C, the C here, and then corresponds to angle C here. The thing is, you're not always going to have A, B, and C. Like sometimes you might have X, Y, and Z. So you have to kind of know how the equation works. You cannot just rely on plugging in the letters and the letters matching. So you have to understand how it works and really look at the law of cosines. So a side squared equals, these are the other two sides, whatever letters they are, times cosine of the angle that corresponds to that side. So typically what happens most often with law of sines is that you're given an angle and then the two sides on either side of it. So we don't have, remember how we wanted for law of sines that corresponding side angle? We don't have that. What we have is the other two sides. So let's say I'm trying to find, well, it says find x to the nearest tenth. So I'm finding a side squared. That means that's going to be on this side. So x squared equals, if I have, hold on, I need to make this pen a little, it's a little fat. So x squared, whatever side I have, remember corresponds to cosine of that angle. So way over here, I'm going to multiply by cosine of that corresponding angle. Corresponding to x is 44 degrees. This other stuff refers to the other two sides. So 2.9, 0.9, doesn't matter which order you do them in. Okay, so it doesn't matter if I do the 2.9 or the 0.9, what order I do them in. So 2.9 squared plus the other one squared, 0.9 squared, minus 2 times, am I going to have room? The two sides, 2.9, 0.9 times cosine. So, okay, listen. Linda, listen. People are going to mess this up every single year. People mess this up. In your calculator right now, do that part. Get a number. Okay, I got 9.22. Okay. In your calculator right now, all of this stuff is multiplied together. This whole thing. People do this part, and then they do this part, and then they subtract, and then they multiply by cosine. You cannot do that. That does not work. Order of operations, multiplication comes before subtraction. So do this part first, then multiply all of this next. Okay, so that is 5.219. Then you can subtract. I got 3.755. Then subtract the 2. 5.465. Then we're taking the square root, 2.34. Again, make sure that your answer is reasonable, 2.34. So one side's 0.9, one's 2.9. Yeah, 2.34 makes sense. All the mistakes, well, if you get it set up correctly after that, all the mistakes are going to happen right here, right there. Okay, let's try another one. The designers of a rock climbing wall are planning the location of the grips. That's these little things. To create the most challenging climbing experience, they want to adjust the placement of the grips. Find the value of x to the nearest degree. So this time I am solving for an angle, and I have all the sides. So we can't use law of sines again because we don't have a side and an angle that correspond, that go together. When I set it up, the side squared, so 33 squared, equals, on that other side, we do cosine of the corresponding angle. The angle is x. In the inside are the other two sides. So one side squared, doesn't matter which order you do them in. One side squared plus the other side squared minus 2 times those sides. Okay. So on this one, we can't multiply this whole thing out, right? That's not going to work because I don't know x. So 33 squared equals, I am going to do this, and I am going to do this, and then you have to be super careful. You have to be super careful. You cannot subtract these. That does not work because 1280 is being multiplied by cosine. You can't subtract. It's like 5 minus 2x. You cannot, 4 minus 2x. You can't subtract those and just get 2x. They're not like terms. They're not the same thing. We can't subtract. So what we need to do is move the 1856 to the other side by subtracting it from both sides. So I get negative 767 equals negative 1280 times cosine of x. Times cosine, right? So if I want to get rid of that, I'm going to divide by negative 1280. Divide by negative 1280. So this is 1. 767. I just dropped the negative because negative divided by a negative is a positive. How do we get rid of cosine? We have cosine of x and we're trying to solve for x. Do you remember how to get rid of the cosine? We use the inverse. So an inverse cosine undoes a cosine and just gets us x. And then if we do it on one side, we have to do it on the other. So we have to do inverse cosine on the other side. Use your parentheses. Type that into your calculator. To the nearest degree, I got 53 degrees. Okay. Do I have one more down there? Yeah, we do. Solve the triangle. Remember from lesson 17, solve means you have to find everything. All the sides, all the angles. And I picked this one because I want to show you something. Law of cosines is our last ditch, right? That's like our least favorite thing because it is the longest. We have to do that because we don't have a corresponding side and angle in this triangle. So we're going to pick an angle to find first. I'm just going to pick A. Comes first alphabetically. Okay. So its side, 7 squared, means that cosine of A on the other side, because whatever side you have here, the corresponding angle on the other side, and then the other two sides in here. So 8 squared plus 11 squared minus 2 times those two sides. 7 squared is 49. 8 squared plus 11 squared is 113. Minus, ooh, I'm doing the wrong one. Hold on, I started doing the wrong problem. Now I'm actually going to have to do my calculator live. Didn't want to do that. 185 minus 176. Okay, remember, you cannot subtract these. That doesn't work. So we need to subtract the 185 from both sides. Then we're going to divide to get rid of the 176. We're trying to get that A alone. So we're trying to get rid of everything around the A. So I'm going to divide by 176. Cosine of A equals negative and negative make positive. So 136 over 176. To get rid of cosine, I use inverse cosine because those undo each other. A equals, and then inverse cosine on this side. So inverse cosine of, use parentheses, 136 divided by 176. To the nearest degree, so I got 39 degrees for A. Okay. So you could continue to do that for the other two angles. However, now that we have a corresponding side and angle, we have these two that go together, we have enough to do law of sines. So I can switch now and do law of sines. I don't have to continue with law of cosines. Cosines, like, remember, our least favorite. So now that I have that corresponding side and angle, I'm going to switch back to law of sines because it's faster and I like it better. So side divided by sine of your angle equals, which one do we want to find next? Let's keep going in alphabetical order. So let's find B next. Its side is 11. 11, that does not look like it. Sine of B. Remember this from 17? So we are cross multiplying. And then divide by 7. Sine of B equals that whole thing. To get rid of sine, if we want to try to solve for an angle, we want B by itself. To get rid of sine, we do inverse sine. So we're going to get this as a decimal and then do inverse sine. And B is equal to 94 degrees. Okay. So now I have two angles in a triangle. I could do sine or cosine, law of sines or cosines for C, but if I know two angles of a triangle, I know they add up to 180. So by the time I get to the last one, I can just subtract these two from 180. So each of them gets progressively a little bit easier. The first one you have to do cosine, then the second one you can do sine, and by the time you get to the third, you're just subtracting from 180. Oh, I remember that. Okay, so the last one, and I'm not going to do this whole thing with you because it's the same as the other one. There's one thing that I wanted to point out, and then I'll tell you what the answer is so that you can double check your own work. So we have a triangle with sides 16, 9, and 8. Oop, there's one triangle. So let's do 16, 9, and 8. That's all they give us. And then it says find the measure of the largest angle. So this angle corresponds to this side. This angle corresponds with 8. This angle corresponds to 16. Clearly, my triangle is not drawn to scale, right? The largest angle is the one that corresponds with the largest side. So since 16 is the largest side, the largest angle would be its corresponding angle over here. So we were trying to solve for angle X. So again, this is a great one for you to practice. See if you can get it set up. I'm going to tell you that it's 140 degrees. And if you try it and need help and don't know how to get that, then let me know in class and I will do it with you.